We're just gonna play a little bit of our good old Kalista Elise deck. This was the deck we were playing yesterday. The sort of like aggro endure concept came in like really high on the stats. I've put Brittle Steel and Tempo Endure. Does that make sense? I don't think so, no. I think it's a little too trolly. Oh yeah, we're still using Jinx board. I should probably switch off of that. What do you guys think? Zed Kalista. So Zed Kalista is like kind of like aggressive Ionia. There tends to not be like really amazing early Vile Feast targets there, although you do want to be like pretty defensive against them. It's like Green Glade Duo is often... How many of these decks are actually running Green Glade Duo? Zed Kalista? How common is that right now? I don't really see a lot of Zed Kalista anymore. This is like an old school kind of deck. I'll do this. Typically, you want to be playing this matchup a bit slower. We're not really in a hurry to go off. This is a nut draw. Nice. That's also a little nutty. I mean, he doesn't really have a good duo here since he can't really block anything for value. Whoa. Okay. That's a new one. I don't know. There's a weird consideration to skip this attack just for the sake of like getting the value Vile Feast on that. Because when you Vile Feast that, it is quite valuable. You stop the effect from it going off. I'm not sure how much... Yeah, given this hand state, it was probably slightly better to literally just skip that attack. Like, he doesn't have big counters that... We would have to Vile proactively, pretty much, which usually allows him to get a Grasp off, which is... Or, sorry, a Glimpse off, which is not good. That's not typically what you want. And then you might not be able to Kalista on 3. That's a close call, whether we should have attacked there or not. Why don't we see Gangplank, Misfortune, Swain for slow burn decks? Misfortune isn't a slow card, and Gangplank kind of isn't a card. Yeah, seems like a very basic block. I don't mind my Omen Hawk dying. I want to keep my Kalista health a little higher. His deck should have pretty scarce ways of dealing with the Kalistas. Like, his best answer is going to be like Will of Ionia, which he'll probably do, like, either right before she flips or when she's flipping. And that will be a little annoying, but it's still something I come out very much ahead on. Hit the Keeper, which is going to be, I think, a pretty easy play out here. It's going to depend a little bit on what he does. You know, you want to watch out for, like, the Scourge Deathmark combo. Like, what does this mean? Like, what is the Green Glade Lookout version of this deck running? I actually have no idea. Ledgerus? Yeah, Ledgerus is definitely a good bet, but he can't have it in his hand because Green Glade Lookout discounts the most expensive thing. It's not really a reason to attack with a Sentry here. We actually value its ability to block, I think. So all we need to do is basically make sure that we have one unit trigger here on defense. So on our open development on 6, we can open Caretaker, which will level up the Kalista, and then swing in like that. That's going to be the most important thing. So we do want to trigger a death here. I'm pretty happy to like preempt this Glimpse. I think there's going to be no issues with this. He's got like a big punchy boy. I don't think I'm going to mind this. I think this looks totally fine to me. Okay, and now I'm happy to take the Glimpse when we're outside of like Vile Feast. Saving Glimpse in this matchup can be kind of nice for Scourge Deathmark, but he seems to not have that. Okay, this is death number 2, and yeah, we'll open it with death number 3 on Caretaker. Probably on the Sentry, but depending on how he attacks, I might use the Sentry to block instead. We'll see. It's a good draw. Omen Hawk's actually great here. Yeah, usually it's the solo attack, and then we just tank the 5. I'm pretty okay with that. There's an interesting universe where we Black Spear the Shadow Assassin now so that we can kill it with a sapling. I don't think I would hate that necessarily, but we can Black Spear it later for pretty much the same value. We plan to deny, which you could have mana for later. And we lose the ability to Omen Hawk here preemptively. I think I really value the preemptive Omen Hawk. So, as much as it's sort of adorable, I think I do have to pass. Okay. And now we can choose whether we want to Blighted Caretaker on the Sentry to draw the card earlier, or the Omen Hawk to be a little more stat efficient. Yeah, pretty bad the Hunters, but that's okay. I think the Omen Hawk to be a little more stat efficient is good. I don't have a hand that really needs to like improve in any weird ways. Also the Kalista pull. Kalista's pulling Keeper, right? I need to be keeping track of Kalista pulls. I've never like played a lot of a Kalista deck.
Do not fear the shrouded path.
Whoa. That... What does he have that he just played that into my sapling? I don't get it. I don't... Could he have anything? Oh no, we just have the other sentry. Yeah, because we had a second sentry. That's... Yeah, I really don't understand that one. That one's very strange. But yeah, the Kalista attack is fine here. I don't think we need to do anything particularly strange. I'm happy kind of like swinging in with this. I don't think he has like too good of a block here. We do need to leave one thing back so that we can summon the sentry and sacrifice it. And I guess that's just gonna be our other sentry. Because we want a little more offensive potential here. No reason to leave Kalista back. Like, yes, he has the ability to kill her, but he'll have to pay a very hefty price to kill her, and I won't mind that. I feel pretty in control here. When you're ahead, you always want to be thinking, okay, what are my lose conditions? What are the scare cards, right? You always want to think, okay, what's the scare card? Well, Whale is kind of scary, but it's only scary this turn, and he tapped under Whale by playing Zed, right? Which, like, immediately just didn't make any sense. So he can't have Whale, and even if he did it wouldn't be playable. Some kind of like, you know, Deathmark, Darkwater Scourge combo was kind of like scare cards a couple of turns ago. We're past that point now. Yeah, something like Will of Ionia can set me back, but he needs to be closing this game out like really, really fast. Here's the thing. We have a lot more cards in hand than him, right? He's low on resources, so he needs to be ending the game early so that he doesn't just like lose the resource exchanges. But he also doesn't really have the board state to do that. So just in terms of like thinking to myself, okay, what are the scariest things you could have? What's our lose condition? Because when you're winning, you want to identify your lose condition, and when you're losing, you want to identify your win condition. You're thinking to yourself, okay, I think I'm just good. Like, I'm trying to think of like what I'm scared of here. He didn't have Ledros in his earlier hands, but he could have drawn it here. The scary thing is him having some weird gimmick that can kill us over the top with these elusives without us having an opportunity to block them. Is probably like the single biggest thing. I wouldn't mind just using Black Spear on the big one so I can threaten it with like a double Vile Feast. That is, however, a really big commitment though. And you will be using it in a situation where, you know, he might have the ability to stop it from dying, which is bad, you know. Then you wouldn't be able to kill like the smaller Shadow Assassin either. It's kind of like greedy, basically, to go in for the big one. Because of that, I might actually prefer to just Black Spear the small one. As weird as that might seem. It seems a little backwards. But basically, we can't guarantee that the big one dies for value. Like, the double Vile Feast is a really large commitment, like a pre-commitment that I don't want to make. I'd have to, like, set it up and then, you know, maybe he glimpses and we just lose a ton of resources into that for no reason. Losing to Dawn and Dusk now? Yeah, Dawn and Dusk is definitely a bit of a threat. I think that could have been like the bigger reason to go for the big one. I didn't identify Dawn and Dusk. You're very right about that. And that's like something that these decks can run. Like, I think the current versions of this deck don't currently, but honestly, the way his deck is built increases the likelihood. And I'm also not 100% sure. Maybe they do build it. So that was definitely a misplay. Because that's the kind of card when we're asking ourselves these questions, we need to be identifying correctly. Yeah, Dawn of Dusk is actually one of the things we could lose to. So, definitely should have gone in for the 5-1. Have a Hawk here, I guess. I feel pretty alright. This is fine. Don't you survive with Feast? Well, yes, yeah, but he could have other things. He could have, like, Mark of the Isles, Dawn and Dusk, right? There's many things he could have that would be an issue, or something that gives him, like, a small amount of over the top, right? Like, a second Shadow Assassin, like Dawn and Dusk, and then, yeah, or I guess it would be third Shadow Assassin since he already played two. But that's like how the lose condition starts, is him having Dawn and Dusk. Okay, we tapped under Vile Feast, so we gave him the opportunity to glimpse. That's fair. We had to. We couldn't have not played Endure here. What we could have done is we could have not played Omen Hawk, I guess, to be able to beat a glimpse. That would have been slightly better. I don't think it can be a big deal here, but again, second time, that would have been slightly better.
The guru follows.
So Kalista here is just bringing like a 4-4. I'm fairly happy with this swing. I don't see any problems with it. Spark Beast should be on the other side. Omen Hawk is just not putting enough value into this attack. He should have to trade like really heavily this board. So again, how are we losing? Well, he just drew some big cards. You know, could have a Ledros. His deck probably runs 2 Ledroses with the way it plays. Maybe even 3. He probably has Atrocity. Okay. But anyway, this is a good example of just like how you should think about the game and what kinds of questions you need to be asking yourself. Which is, you know, when we're ahead, how could we lose? What could go wrong? We answered that question wrong. We actually didn't think about Dawn and Dusk, and we made a misplay because of it. And then we made a second misplay because another way things could go wrong is by letting him get a glimpse off. I think at that point we can't really lose, but it's still kind of good habit building in general for very similar situations. Like, there's no reason to play the Omen Hawk there. It's very easy for him to have glimpse. Whenever you're behind, them getting a glimpse off is always one of the lose conditions, especially because he needed to enable the keeper. So playing the Omen Hawk was a second misplay that game. And both plays we made were high, kind of like average value standard plays. But the whole point is that when you're ahead, you kind of need to abandon the idea of general... Like, general value is a concept for when it's an even game, right? When you're ahead, you need to be thinking, okay, how do I lose this? And then play for that. You don't play for normal probabilities or normal value. You're like, what's the actual way I could lose this? And then you play super defensively around that. When you're behind, you do the opposite. You think to yourself, okay, what would have to happen such that we could win this? And then you have to play assuming that, right? So those are scenarios where you shouldn't be playing for average value. And those are, by the way, most games in the game, you're going to be thinking in those terms instead of thinking in terms of average value. And that's why those 2 plays we made were misplays. So we've got Viheimer, so we're attacking odds. We want to play Elise on 2. Kalista on 3 seems very likely in this sort of case. You know, Kalista's going to hit value. We do want to be able to, like, have some really proper aggression. God, I kind of want to kick the Kalista out of this hand. I really want to turn 1 play here, especially since we're attacking on 1. And she's often just going to die to, like, a Thermo Beam. Best case scenario, she forces out, like, a Get Excited, and the best case scenario on top of that is that Get Excited is kind of uncomfortable for him. But even if he Get Excited, he might just have a discard that he totally doesn't mind at all. I really want to go a little greedy with this deck. I want a mulligan trying to hit, like, my big power card, really, you know? So we have a few different options here. We can set up Keeper and then Kalista and then Butcher. That's kind of like the highest overall value play. And we're not really losing too much to Thermo Beam. Whereas at least we'll trade up against Thermo Beam. You know, it's 2 mana for 3 mana if I play it right now and he Thermos right now. But trading up isn't necessarily what you want to do as the aggro deck. In fact, you don't really want to trade at all. Here's the thing you have to understand. Like, it feels good, but as the aggressor, like, when you play Elise and they play Thermo, they don't really mind, right? Because you are... Oh, that's interesting. Wow, that might change our play. Now I think we Elise and Bark Beast. But now we're playing Elise outside of Thermo range, which is kind of nice.
I don't bite.
We're hoping he doesn't have, you know, something like a Static Shock, which could be big if he puts us on Butcher. So, I mean, he still has the Thermo on Elise. If he would like it, he's got it, but it's still better than him Thermoing Kalista. Anyway, as the aggro deck, like, you have to realize, if the opponent just, like, trades card for card, even if they spend a bit more mana sometimes, you're still gonna lose, right? Like, you're still... If you trade card for card, even if sometimes they spend a bit more mana, even if you're trading up all the way, if you're trading, they'll just... You won't kill them fast enough, and they'll just eventually draw better cards. Interesting. He waited a turn. Just because of the Bark Beast? Is that proper for him to do?
It's too late for you.
I don't think that makes sense. Right? It's like you're still gonna need to block in a way that does something more efficiently, and you're not killing the Bark Beast later. I mean, I can level up Kalista for an open attack here. Whoa! Oh man. Wow. That's so nuts. Is that good? What's Kalista pulling? Elise? Kalista's pulling Elise? Does an Elise pulled by a Kalista... Or no, it's pulling a Ravenous Butcher. So typically you don't really want to be open attacking into this deck, but it's turn 5 and Vi's a big scare card. I think I will attack. Does it pull champs? Oh yeah, right. Guys, I don't play Kalista.
The wrong shall find their vengeance!
So we have a really good open attack. Normally, so against spell heavy decks, you really don't want to be open attacking. Because when the open attacking is how you give their spells value, right? If that makes sense. Because like you're spending less mana and they're spending more mana for the attack. So it's like that's why spells work. It's because open attacks happen sometimes. But because we're in a really good attack, because there's none of his spells that feel amazing against us right now, and because he could have Vi here, and again, that's our lose condition, like, we're thinking, okay, we don't want to let him get a decent blocker. Let's actually swing. This is really rare. Almost always against this deck, as the aggressor, you should be developing into your attacks. And almost always, that's kind of the biggest mistake people make against these sorts of decks. They'll feel like they have to open attack. I think there's this weird... I don't know what it is, but there's this psychological bias where... Ooh. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy to glimpse here. Seems fine. There's this psychological bias where, as the aggressor, you feel inclined to open attack, which I think can be true sometimes, but I think mostly it's backwards. Like, as the aggressive player, you're the aggressor often because they have defensive capabilities with a lot of spells, and that will incline you to develop instead. You know, it's a generalization. There's always going to be exceptions, but I do find that is kind of like often backwards of how it normally works. So it's important to kind of think about it in that way, right? That this is just a rare outlier where we want to be open attacking, because normally we're just rewarding his spells otherwise. Got a 9/9, playing into like Will of Ionia by doing this. I mean, his best kill is like something big. But my other Bark Beast will be big, right? Does he have to attack here? It's sort of interesting. If I pass, I don't think a bad player would necessarily pass back. I think you could pass back here, even though he sort of needs to develop something. He can't really let me use my mana. I think I will play my other Bark Beast. It basically allows him the free kill on my Bark Beast, which is good for him. He wants that. Basically, he gets to save 2 health on his Vi by not killing my bigger Bark Beast, even though they're kind of the same unit. However, I don't care about the health on his Vi, so I'm fine to do this. I think I have to play Neverglade here. As much as I would love to play They Who Endure, it's just not the timing yet. And here, all of a sudden, now we're in the reverse situation, right? And it's really important to identify that. Because now, all of a sudden, his Vi's already on the board, so we're scared, even though we have a good attack, and even though he's at low health, his scare cards are all fast speed cards, right? Biggest one maybe being something like Will. And you might say, well, if he has Will, then he counters They Who Endure, right? Well, kind of, but if he has Will, he even more so counters an open attack, because Will is fast speed. What I could do instead is go for the Caretaker, which plays a little bit less into Will, while also, you know, enabling They Who Endure to be... Okay, I will make a point. The They Who Endure size increase argument doesn't matter at all right now. This card will never need to be bigger than a 10-10. But I think just for the ability to play around Will, I think Caretaker actually does end up a little bit more impactful here. And it deals 1 guaranteed off of Neverglade. Gives me some, like... the 1 draw could actually be something that gives me an option. Biggest hit would have been Fury of the North. Fury of the North is, like, a huge hit off of that draw. Also, Refuge. Oh, you mean in terms of not playing the Saplings for the Refuge? Yeah. No, like, the player on Refuge benefits the Saplings as well. So there's a good chance we are ending the game this turn. Even if we're not, he shouldn't really be able to win the next turn. A good player would have also passed after you played that Bark Beast. Yes, that's true as well. But then I would have had, like, it still would have been better for me if he passes there than before Bark Beast. So we have to do it like that, but yes, that's a good point. And again, all of his threats are at slow speed. We're not curving out this turn. So we're going to do something that would normally be a little bit weird and just take a Vile Feast. I don't think this Vile Feast can possibly get better than this. The ability for it to deal 1 damage actually has, well, you know, summoning the spider dealing 1 damage actually has a small chance of making a difference. I don't think this game is really losable, but it's just better to do it like this to get in, like, the 1 for free. If he has, I'm trying to think what he could, it would be something weird. It would be like, he can't really survive this. It doesn't really matter. Refuge? Well, but we're dragging it to the right side, so, like, you can heal a good amount, but it would never matter. You can use Vile Feast to kind of counter Refuge, but Refuge is already not winning him the game, so... Okay, so another clean game. And again, this is just... It's a good deck, because it's kind of like basic, but because it can also play slow or fast. It's a great deck for kind of like teaching and learning fundamentals, I think.